Stop, don't scroll past this. If someone has ever said a sentence that starts with "I knew," and they said it calmly, almost casually, you weren't hurt by impulse. It was intentional. It wasn't a mistake. And your peace became that person's reward. In the next 20 seconds, I'm going to tell you the full sentence. But before that, you need to understand why it's so dangerous. In Jewish wisdom traditions, words carry intention. When someone says something like this coldly, without emotion, they're not being honest. They're trying to control you from the inside. You try to be polite. You try to keep the family calm. You try to be the bigger person. And without realizing it, you do exactly what they want. You explain yourself, you blame yourself, you lose sleep. Today I'm going to give you a 10-second mental response so you don't fall into the trap, and one simple boundary that shuts the door without arguments or explanations. And if you felt a tight feeling in your chest when I said that, maybe it's not an accident that this video showed up for you today. Comment below, it wasn't a mistake. I want to see how many women need to hear this. And subscribe now, because here you learn emotional protection with dignity. No drama, no self-betrayal. Now take a breath with me. What I'm about to say isn't meant to scare you. It's meant to give you clarity. There's a huge difference between someone who speaks in the heat of emotion and someone who chooses words the way someone chooses a blade. When a person hurts you calmly, they're not venting. They're testing how far they can enter your heart without asking permission. And I know that as a woman you were probably taught to let things slide, not make a big deal, keep the peace, but some people use exactly that against you. You try to be fair, and you become the target. You try to be kind, and you become the container for someone else's poison. In Jewish wisdom, there's a simple but powerful principle. Words carry intention. And when the intention is malicious, it's not an opinion, it's an invasion. I'm not here to encourage fighting or revenge. I'm here to teach you how to protect yourself with dignity, without guilt, without over-explaining, without playing the game of someone who wants you to feel small. If this kind of content helps you, subscribe. This channel is for women who want peace, emotional protection, and inner strength, without drama and without losing themselves trying to please people who don't deserve it. Now, let's get to the point. The sentence changes slightly from person to person, but the core is always the same. It usually sounds like this: I knew exactly what I was doing to you. I wanted you to feel that. I planned it from the start. You deserved to suffer. When someone says this, or any version of it, understand one thing. This is not a humble confession. It's a power move. It's as if they're saying, I had control over your emotions, and I want you to know it. And here's the part that can change your life. When you hear this, your mind wants to do one of two things immediately. Either you explode or you explain yourself. And both reactions feed exactly what that person wants. So remember this: acknowledge the intention, but don't give up your peace. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth. You don't need to beg for understanding. And you don't need to prove that you're good. Your dignity is not up for debate. In a moment, I'm going to show you the 3 signs that confirm this pattern, and especially the 2 mistakes that keep you stuck, even after you realize it wasn't a mistake. And when I get to the 3rd sign, you're going to think of someone with a clarity that sends a chill down your spine. Before you try to respond to anything, you need to understand one simple truth. People who hurt you on purpose almost never start with the attack. They start with the build-up. They collect small reasons in their head. They reinterpret what you said. They turn your boundary into an offense, your distance into arrogance, your silence into a mind game, your kindness into weakness. And when they finally hurt you, they already feel justified. Not because you deserved it, but because they needed to create a story where you are the one at fault. And here's a very common pattern. There are 3 weights that shape how a person speaks to you. 3 layers that, when they're not addressed, turn into poison. The first weight is the visible one, what everyone can see. Stress, work problems, frustration, a recent argument, obvious jealousy. This is the socially acceptable layer. The person may even use it as an excuse. I was stressed. I was going through a lot. But the second weight is older. It comes from the past. Repeated family wounds, abandonment, comparison, old humiliation, that deep feeling of never being chosen. Many people carry this for decades, and instead of healing it, they look for someone to dump it on. And the third weight is the most dangerous one. It's the hidden weight, the part they don't even admit to themselves: envy, resentment, unfulfilled desire, unresolved guilt, the feeling of falling behind. And when that weight grows, it looks for a target. You know this kind of person. They're not happy when you improve. They get restless. They don't celebrate you. They compare. They criticize. They ask a question that sounds innocent but has a sharp edge that cuts you inside. And you leave the conversation feeling confused, heavy, smaller, without being able to explain why. What happens is this. When those three weights aren't integrated, the person starts to project. They take what they can't stand to see in themselves and place it on you. And this happens very often to women who are grounded, generous, organized, or trying to rebuild their lives with dignity, because your effort to live better activates the wound of someone who refuses to look at their own life. And that's where contempt is born. Pay attention to this. Contempt is not anger. Anger still recognizes the other as human. Contempt is when someone lowers you internally. It's when they believe, even silently, that you deserve less respect, less care, less consideration. And when contempt settles in, the moral barrier starts to fall. That's why the sentence, "I knew exactly what I was doing," is so serious, because it doesn't come from a moment. It comes from a process, and this is where many women fall without even realizing it. You try to fix it with conversation. You try to calm things down. You try to explain yourself better. You think, if I'm clear enough, they'll understand. But someone who is in contempt doesn't want to understand. They want to win. They want to see you react. They want to see you justify yourself. Because the moment you justify yourself, you give them the position of judge. So remember this as a protection warning. Someone who hurts you on purpose is not asking for dialogue. They're asking for access to your emotions. And if you're still here listening, it's because something touched you, not on the surface, deeper than that. And I'll tell you this calmly, it may not be an accident. Maybe you needed to hear this today to stop repeating a pattern that exhausts your soul. From here on, I'm going to show you 3 very clear signs that you're dealing with someone who didn't just slip up, someone who chose to hurt you. And after that, I'll show you the 2 mistakes that keep you stuck, even when you already know the truth. And when I get to the 3rd sign, you'll understand why I said at the beginning it wasn't a mistake. I want you to observe these signs as silent alerts. Not so you live suspicious of everyone, but so you stop blaming yourself when deep down you already know this wasn't normal. Sign number 1, coldness. The person doesn't seem angry. They don't seem out of control. They're composed, sometimes even polite. And that's exactly what confuses you. You think, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I misunderstood. But in this case, coldness is not maturity. It's calculation. They speak calmly, but the words have an edge. And afterward, you carry it in your head for hours. You replay the tone, you replay the context. You try to convince yourself it was unintentional, but your body knows. Your chest tightens, your stomach drops, your energy crashes. Sign number 2, they turn you into the guilty one. Even when you simply set a boundary, they rewrite the story. You say, "I can't right now." They hear, "You're rejecting me." You say, "I'd rather do it this way." They hear, "You're disrespecting me." And little by little, they build an emotional case file against you. They collect sentences. They isolate moments. They ignore everything good you've done and keep only what feeds their narrative. And here's the worst part. You, because you have a good heart, start rethinking everything. You apologize for things that were never mistakes. You start walking on eggshells. You lose your spontaneity because you want peace. But peace with someone like this slowly turns into a prison. Sign number 3. After the attack comes confusion. This is the sign that destroys good women the most. After hurting you, the person changes. They minimize it. They play innocent. They say things like, "You're too sensitive. You misunderstood. You're overreacting. That's not what I meant." And suddenly, you move from being the one who was hurt to being the one on trial. You start wondering if you're becoming difficult, dramatic, bitter. And this is a very old form of control, messing with your perception until you lose your footing. If you recognize this 3rd sign, I want to tell you something clearly. You are not crazy. You're not making this up. You're not needy. You're simply trying to make sense of something that was designed to throw you off balance. Now let me ask you something quickly, because this helps a lot of people and helps this channel grow. Which of these signs have you experienced? Comment below with just 1, 2, or 3. Sometimes the woman reading silently needs to see that she's not the only one. And now comes the most important part. Even when you recognize the signs, there are two mistakes that keep you stuck in this cycle. And I'm going to show you both, because one of them looks like kindness, but it's exactly what weakens you. Now that you've seen the signs, I need to be honest with you. Awareness alone is not enough. There are two mistakes that keep strong women trapped, not because they lack intelligence, but because they have too much heart. Mistake number 1. Reacting on impulse to defend yourself. When someone hurts you on purpose, the first impulse is to clear your name, correct the injustice, prove that you're not what they're implying. And this is where the trap is. That person doesn't want a conversation. They want a reaction. They want to see you emotional. They want to see you explaining yourself. They want to see you trying to prove the obvious. Because when you react emotionally, you give them exactly what they were looking for: access to your inner world. You start writing long messages. You list facts. You remind them of everything you've done. And in the end, they reply with one cold sentence. And you feel like you lost twice. You were hurt, and you spent your energy trying to fix someone who never wanted to be fixed. Mistake number 2. Over-explaining to keep the peace. This is the most common mistake among women who carry everything: family, home, work, children, grandchildren, responsibilities, and who were taught to be the mature one. You want to avoid conflict, so you explain, and explain, and explain again. You open up details of your life, your reasons, your heart, believing that transparency creates respect. But with certain people, transparency becomes ammunition. They take what you shared and use it later. They turn your vulnerability into an attack. They call your sincerity weakness. And the more you explain yourself, the more you place yourself in the position of someone asking permission to exist. I want you to remember this as a rule of protection. Someone who truly loves you does not require you to humiliate yourself in order to be understood. And here's the part that changes the game. When you avoid these two mistakes, the control starts to break, because the person realizes they can no longer pull you onto their terrain. In a moment, I'm going to teach you a simple technique, a 10-second rule you can use in real time. It's not about becoming cold. It's about returning to your center before you say anything. And when you learn this, something powerful happens. You stop being an easy target. You stop being a container. And you begin to become sacred territory. So stay with me, because the next part is practical. It's the how, something you can use today, without conflict, without guilt, and without losing yourself. Now I'm going to give you a tool that's simple, practical, and discreet. You don't need a stage, you don't need a speech, you don't need to win an argument. You only need 10 seconds. Because when someone hurts you on purpose, their first goal is to pull you out of your center. They want you to respond from the wounded place. And when you respond from the wounded place, you betray yourself. So here's the rule. When someone says something that cuts you inside, you don't respond immediately. You create a pause, 10 seconds, and during those 10 seconds you do 3 things internally without anyone noticing. First, you remember the key phrase, "It wasn't a mistake." That brings your clarity back. Because what knocks you down the most isn't the hurt, it's the doubt. Second, you ask yourself a silent question. If I respond right now, am I protecting myself or am I explaining myself? That question cuts the impulse in half. It puts you back in control. Third, you choose a short boundary. It's a response that doesn't feed the game. Something like, "I heard what you said. I'll think about it and get back to you. Now isn't a good time. I'm not going to engage in this tone." Notice this. There's no attack, no justification, no monologue. It's short, it's grounded. And that's exactly what disarms someone who wants to dominate you. Now let me tell you something many women need to hear. Silence, when it's intentional, is not weakness. It's protection. You're not swallowing abuse. You're blocking an intrusion. And if just imagining this technique already brings you some relief, subscribe now. Because here you learn how to set boundaries with firmness and peace, without guilt, and without having to prove anything to anyone. In a moment, I'm going to tell you a realistic story. It sounds simple, but it will show you exactly how this game works, and why, when you change your response, the other person's behavior changes immediately. Stay with me. What you'll recognize in this story can save you years of your life. Let me tell you a story that, if you listen all the way through, will help you understand why I insist on one thing so strongly. This isn't about winning an argument. It's about not handing your peace to someone who wants to control you from the inside. Imagine a woman. Let's call her Helen. Helen isn't perfect, but she's the kind of woman who tries to do the right thing. She carries a lot. She holds a lot of weight. And like most women listening to this right now, she learned early on to be the balanced one, the peacemaker. Helen has someone in her life who shows up from time to time with that familiar energy, polite on the outside, sharp on the inside. It could be a family member, an old friend, a co-worker, someone who knows her well and knows exactly where to press. One day, in what seems like a normal conversation, that person drops a sentence. No yelling, no drama, calmly. And that's where the poison is. They say something like, "I knew you were going to do that." And then comes the second part, the one that really destabilizes. "I knew exactly what I was doing to you." When Helen hears it, her body reacts. It's not just sadness, it's that mix of shock and shame, like she's been exposed. Her first instinct is to respond immediately, to explain, to defend herself, to prove that she's not what's being implied. Because her mind starts racing. Was I unfair? Did I do something wrong? Should I have said it differently? And her heart is still trying to save the relationship, the atmosphere, the peace. But that night, Helen goes home and she can't shut it off. She lies down, the sentence comes back, she gets up and the sentence comes back, she tries to distract herself, the sentence comes back. And this is where many women get lost. It's no longer the person speaking, it's the sentence living inside her. The next day, Helen wakes up tired, but she decides to do something she's never done before. Instead of writing a long message, instead of building arguments, she remembers what I told you here, 10 seconds. Helen sees the person again, and at some point they try to restart the game. A comment, said in that tone that sounds innocent but is loaded with intention. Inside, Helen feels the urge to react, but she doesn't. She pauses. She breathes internally, and she thinks, it wasn't a mistake. Then she asks herself, if I respond now, am I protecting myself, or am I explaining myself? So she answers with a short sentence, grounded, no aggression, no justification. I heard what you said. Then she adds, I'm not going to engage like this. The person gives a small smile, like they weren't expecting that. And then comes the revealing part. They try to pull Helen back into the game. You're being dramatic. You're overreacting. I didn't even say anything serious. And this is where most women fall, because the instinct is to explain, no, it's just that I felt hurt because I was only trying to say to her, you misunderstood me. But Helen doesn't go there. She calmly repeats, I'm not going to engage like this. Then she changes the subject, or ends the conversation, or walks away. And in that moment, nothing magical happens. What happens is psychological. The person realizes they've lost access, because the goal was never to resolve anything. The goal was to provoke an emotional state in Helen, guilt, confusion, the need to prove her worth. And when Helen doesn't hand that over, the game stops. At that point, the person feels out of control, and that's when the real face shows up. Irritation, contempt, or that cold, icy silence. This is where you understand something deep. Anyone who feeds on your reaction gets uncomfortable when you return to your center. In the days that follow, they try a different strategy. They send a message that looks like concern. Are you okay? I've been thinking about you. I didn't like the way you treated me. Notice how subtle it is. Now they're trying to flip the story. They want Helen to look cold, ungrateful, harsh, and Helen feels that old guilt rise up. Because good women absorb guilt fast. They carry the world on their shoulders and still apologize for breathing. But this time, Helen chooses something different. She doesn't respond right away. She follows another simple rule. Don't respond from the wound. Respond from clarity. She lets the day pass. She sleeps on it. She lets the sun set on it. And only after that, if she chooses to respond, she keeps it short. I respect you, but I don't accept comments like that. Period. And that changes everything. Because now Helen isn't arguing, she's setting a boundary. This is where you start seeing the full pattern. People who hurt on purpose usually follow the same script. First, they plant the sentence. Then, they watch your reaction. If you react emotionally, they feel powerful. If you react by explaining yourself, they feel in control. And if you react with a boundary, they try to punish you with guilt. And if you hold that line without re-entering the game, something very common happens. Either the person pulls away, or they try to come back in an even more disguised way. Because deep down, they don't want to lose the place they occupied inside you. The place of inner voice, the place of judge. And I'm going to tell you something that hurts and but frees you. Many people aren't bothered by who you are. They're bothered by what they're forced to see in themselves when they're around you. When you grow, when you seek peace, when you choose dignity, you remind them of what they didn't do for themselves. And that awakens the third weight, the hidden one. Envy, resentment, the urge to shrink you so they can feel bigger. That's why sometimes the more you stay quiet and keep living your life, the more they poke at you. They want proof that they still affect you. They want confirmation that they still have a key. And this is where you, as a woman, need to remember a very old, very wise truth. Not everyone deserves full access to your life. Not everyone deserves to know your fresh start, your plans, your joy, your inner world. Because the more someone knows, the more they know where to press. Instead of telling everything, Helen becomes selective. She keeps her wins to herself. She shares her pain only with someone she truly trusts. She stops explaining herself to people who have no real authority over her life. And slowly she realizes this. Strength isn't yelling. Strength is not begging for validation. So let me ask you something, gently but directly. When someone hurts you, do you usually respond to protect yourself or to explain yourself? If you're honest with yourself, you'll understand why this video is touching you, and maybe it's not a coincidence. Maybe life is calling you to a new place, a place where you don't have to prove dignity. You simply live with dignity. In a moment, I'm going to show you why these people come back, even after hurting you, and how to close the door for good, without war and without carrying guilt. Stay with me, because the next part is what separates the woman who heals from the woman who stays trapped in the same cycle for years. And now comes something many women only understand after a long time. Sometimes the worst part isn't the attack, it's what comes after. Because when someone hurts you on purpose, they're not just releasing something. They're trying to leave a mark inside you, a fear, a doubt, a voice that keeps repeating, did I deserve this? Did I overreact? Am I becoming difficult? And when you start to rise, when you regain your balance, when you stop explaining yourself, that person feels like they're losing something. And what comes back isn't love. Very often, it's control. They come back quietly. Sometimes with a casual, hey, long time no see. Sometimes with a message that sounds like concern. Sometimes with a compliment that carries hidden poison. Sometimes through someone else saying she was talking about you. And if you're not paying attention, you fall into a dangerous cycle. You think this time it'll be different. You give one more chance. You open one more piece of your heart. And before you realize it, their hand is back on the same sensitive spot. Behind this, there's usually the same engine. Envy and resentment. They don't want you to be okay if that means they have to face their own emptiness. They need you confused so they can keep feeling superior. It's sad but it's real. That's why when you start doing better, their return isn't about apologizing. It's a test. Do I still get to you? And if they manage to pull you into a long conversation, an explanation, an emotional release, they confirm that they still have access. So here's a simple rule that's worth gold. Someone who hurt you on purpose does not deserve an explanation. They deserve a boundary. And a boundary isn't rudeness. A boundary is sanity. That's why so many wisdom traditions talk about protection, discretion, and guarding your blessings. Not to live in fear, but to live with emotional intelligence. You don't need to expose your every step. You don't need to share your fresh start with someone who has already shown they don't celebrate your wins. You don't need to broadcast your happiness to people who secretly enjoy seeing you fall. And here's a quick request, because this helps many women who are stuck in this cycle. If you know someone who over-explains, over-apologizes, and keeps trying to maintain a peace that costs her soul, share this video with her. Sometimes, one sentence changes a life. In the next part, I'm going to give you 5 practical boundaries, simple, doable, to close this door from the inside. No fights, no scenes, no guilt. Now I want to give you 5 practical boundaries. Think of them as inner fences, not fences to trap you, fences to keep other people's poison out of your territory, I'm going to be very direct here because good women often wait too long to put up fences. They endure, they excuse, they try to be fair. But when someone acts with intention, fairness without boundaries becomes exposure. Boundary number 1. Stop giving immediate access to your emotions. If someone provokes you and you respond right away, you're saying without words, you have the key. So the first fence is simple. Time. When your body reacts, don't respond from your body. Respond from clarity. You can say, not right now. I'll think about it. We'll talk later. That's not avoidance. That's refusing to trade your peace for a moment of relief. Boundary number 2. Don't explain yourself to people who have no authority over your life. This boundary is freeing. Many women live as if they're always being evaluated, but you don't need to justify every choice. You don't need to present a life report. You don't need to convince anyone that you're a good person. If someone demands explanations with an accusing tone, you can respond briefly. I decided this. I understand your opinion. I'm not discussing this. That's it. Someone who loves you may ask questions with respect. Someone who hurts you demands explanations to put you in the guilty seat. Boundary number 3. Be selective about what you share. This is where many women get hurt again without realizing it. When you're starting over, you want support. You want to be seen. You want to feel less alone. That's human. But some people do not deserve the map of your life. If you share your plans with someone who enjoys minimizing you, they already know where to aim. If you expose your joy to someone who's envious, they'll try to ruin it. So keep some things to yourself, not out of fear, out of wisdom. Some victories grow stronger in silence. Some blessings are protected through discretion. Boundary number 4. If reality is being distorted, document it. I want to say this carefully so it doesn't turn into paranoia, but if you deal with someone who twists what was said, who swears they never said things they did, who tries to make you doubt your own memory, you need an anchor. You don't document things to attack. You document them so you don't lose your mind. You don't keep records to get revenge. You keep them so you don't lose yourself. Because gaslighting has one clear goal: to make you doubt yourself. And the moment a woman starts doubting herself, she starts accepting things she would have never accepted before. So if you need to, write it down for yourself. Keep it for yourself. Protect the clarity of your mind. Your heart deserves peace, but your mind needs solid ground. Boundary number 5. Have a witness to your truth. Strong women often try to carry everything alone, and that's a mistake that comes at a high cost. There are pains that were never meant to be carried in silence. So choose one person, just one, someone you truly trust, and share. Not to play the victim, but to have an anchor. Because when someone tries to confuse you, a witness gives you reality back. I saw it. You're not overreacting. You have every right to set that boundary. That protects you from falling back into the cycle out of guilt. Now I want you to notice something. These 5 boundaries may sound simple, but when you apply them, you change the entire dynamic. You stop being open ground and become protected territory. And that's why when you do this, some people disappear. Because they didn't want a relationship. They wanted access. If you're listening to this and feeling a strange sense of relief, like someone is organizing your thoughts from the inside, subscribe to the channel. Because what we do here is exactly that. Clarity, protection, and dignity. One step at a time. And now I'm going to give you the final practical piece, a 7-day routine, simple and realistic, to rebuild your inner authority. Not to become someone else, but to return to yourself, without that weight on your chest. Let's do it. This routine closes the cycle. The 7-day routine, simple, realistic, no pressure, no perfectionism. Because a mature woman doesn't need one more thing to manage. She needs something that works. For 7 nights in a row before going to sleep, you'll do one thing. Take a piece of paper, a simple notebook is enough, and write 3 short answers. It doesn't need to look nice. It just needs to be honest. Question 1. What boundary did I protect today, even if it was small? For example, I didn't reply to that message. I left the conversation at the right moment. I didn't explain myself. Question 2. When did I choose my peace instead of being right? Good women exhaust themselves trying to be understood, and often peace is worth more than convincing someone. Question 3. What part of my dignity did I reclaim today? It can be simple. I didn't humiliate myself. I didn't apologize for existing. I didn't accept that tone. And here's something powerful. After 7 days, you'll have written proof that you are changing. Because a wounded mind forgets its own progress quickly, but paper doesn't forget. Now add this to a short mantra, a daily filter. Every time you feel the urge to react, say quietly to yourself, I only respond to what builds me. Then ask, does this build my peace, my clarity, my dignity? If it doesn't, you don't need to respond. And let me tell you this gently, this doesn't make you cold, it makes you free. If you follow this routine for 7 days, you'll feel something shift. You stop being pulled into other people's chaos. You come back to yourself. And when you're rooted in yourself, no sentence can control you. Now there's just one last thing. I'll close with a reminder, an invitation, and a bridge to what comes next. Hold on to this sentence as protection. When someone hurts you on purpose, your peace is not up for negotiation. Today you heard the sentence, you understood the signs. You saw the 2 mistakes that keep you stuck, and you were given clear boundaries. And I hope that, maybe for the first time in a long while, you're feeling something simple right now. Clarity. If this video spoke to you, comment below. It wasn't a mistake. I read them. And it also helps other women realize they're not alone. And subscribe to the channel because here, step by step, you learn how to protect yourself with dignity, without guilt, and without explaining yourself to people who don't deserve it. In the next video, I'm going to reveal the second sentence, the one that sounds like a joke, but is actually disguised contempt, and slowly drains your energy without you even noticing. So stay with me, because your wholeness, your grounded presence, your full self, is already your answer.